The announcement that Ibrahim Traoré, the young leader of Burkina Faso, has unveiled an $800 billion plan to power all of West Africa has ignited debates across the continent and beyond. The sheer ambition of such a project has stunned both critics and supporters, for rarely has Africa witnessed such a bold vision that transcends national boundaries and dares to reshape the very foundations of regional development. At its core, this proposal is not merely about electricity. It is about sovereignty, dignity, and the determination to chart an independent path free from Western dictates. To fully understand the implications of this plan, one must trace the context in which it arises, the history of Africa's energy struggles, and the growing movement of leaders who seek to liberate their nations from the structural traps of dependency. For decades, West Africa has been haunted by energy poverty. Despite being rich in natural resources, vast portions of the population live without reliable electricity. Villages remain in the dark, industries remain underdeveloped, and even major cities experience routine blackouts that cripple productivity and drive away investment. Multinational corporations have long exploited Africa's natural wealth, but they have rarely invested in ensuring the people of the continent reap the benefits. Instead, the region has been trapped in cycles where crude oil, uranium, and other valuable resources are exported cheaply to the West, while finished products and expensive energy solutions are imported back at high costs. This system has reinforced dependency and undermined the ability of African nations to stand on their own feet. Traoré's announcement of an $800 billion project to electrify all of West Africa, therefore, is not just an infrastructural vision. It is a revolutionary declaration that Africa will no longer wait for the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, or Western aid packages to define its destiny. By pooling regional resources, harnessing new alliances with non-Western powers, and placing Africa's people at the center of development, Traoré is positioning Burkina Faso and its neighbors at the heart of a historic shift. He has made it clear that this is not about prestige projects that serve as monuments to leaders. It is about tangible transformation that touches every household, every farm, and every factory. The financial scale of $800 billion may seem staggering, especially for a country like Burkina Faso, which is often portrayed in Western media as small and impoverished. Yet Traoré's framing is different. He emphasizes that this figure is not solely Burkina Faso's burden to bear. Rather, it is a collective commitment that involves multiple West African states, private partnerships that do not undermine sovereignty, and collaborations with emerging global powers who see Africa not as a backyard but as a partner. Already, signs suggest that Chinese, Russian, and even Gulf state actors are watching the project with interest, recognizing that whoever becomes involved in this initiative will not only profit but also earn unprecedented goodwill among hundreds of millions of Africans. But beyond the financing, the question arises, how exactly does Traoré envision powering all of West Africa? The plan is reportedly anchored on a multi-pronged approach that blends renewable energy, natural resources, and cutting-edge infrastructure. Solar power lies at the heart of this effort. West Africa enjoys some of the most consistent sunlight on Earth, with vast stretches of land suitable for large-scale solar farms. Harnessing this energy can generate clean, sustainable power that drastically reduces dependency on fossil fuels while meeting growing demand. In addition, hydropower projects along major rivers like the Niger and Volta are expected to be scaled up, delivering reliable electricity and creating opportunities for irrigation that can transform agriculture. Natural gas reserves, often underutilized or flared off as waste, will be redirected into domestic power generation rather than exported cheaply to Europe. Traoré's strategy also includes the modernization of transmission networks. One of the most crippling obstacles in Africa's energy landscape is not the absence of generation, but the inability to deliver power effectively. Aging grids, fragmented national systems, and lack of cross-border integration have left many regions disconnected. The $800 billion plan proposes a unified West African power corridor, linking nations through modern high-voltage lines that ensure electricity generated in one part of the region can serve households and industries in another. This vision echoes initiatives attempted in the past but largely sabotaged by corruption, foreign meddling, or lack of political will. The difference now is that leaders like Traoré are framing integration not as a dream, but as a survival imperative. The geopolitical dimension of this announcement cannot be overstated. By launching such a bold project, Traoré is sending a signal that Africa is no longer content to be a pawn in the global chessboard. Western governments have long relied on Africa's energy weaknesses as leverage. Loans, aid, and interventions have often been tied to conditions that keep African states compliant. If West Africa achieves energy independence, the bargaining power of Western institutions would weaken dramatically. Suddenly, African nations would not need to beg for development aid, because reliable electricity would unlock industrialization, technological innovation, and job creation on an unprecedented scale. Factories that once fled to Asia could find competitive homes in Africa. Local entrepreneurs could thrive. And most importantly, the dignity of people long treated as powerless could be restored. Naturally, the announcement has rattled Western capitals. Already, think tanks and analysts are questioning whether the financing is realistic, whether the project risks environmental damage, and whether African states are ready to manage such massive infrastructure without corruption. But beneath these surface-level critiques lies a deeper fear that Traoré's vision might actually succeed. If Burkina Faso and its allies demonstrate even partial progress on such a grand plan, the symbolism alone could inspire a wave of defiance across the global south. Leaders in other regions could begin asking why they, too, cannot pool resources and break free from Western control. This domino effect is precisely what Western institutions have sought to prevent, and it explains why the rhetoric against Traoré has grown increasingly hostile in international media. Within Africa, however, the response has been markedly different. From Nigeria to Senegal, citizens are buzzing with anticipation, debating what this could mean for jobs, education, and economic mobility. Young people in particular see the potential for a future where they no longer need to migrate across deserts and seas in search of opportunity. Farmers envision cold storage for their produce, ending the cycle of waste and poverty. Teachers imagine classrooms powered by reliable light, giving children access to digital tools that prepare them for the modern world. In these voices, the dream of Pan-Africanism gains new life, not as an abstract ideology but as a tangible roadmap tied to electricity, opportunity, and dignity. Traoré himself has framed the project not as his personal legacy, but as a generational responsibility. He speaks of children who should inherit a continent lit by its own resources, not one kept in darkness by external manipulation. He reminds audiences that Africa has always been described as rich yet poor, resourceful yet dependent, strong yet shackled. Breaking this contradiction, he argues, requires bold moves that others might dismiss as impossible. For him, the $800 billion figure is less a budget line than a rallying cry. It forces Africans to think big, to imagine themselves as global players rather than passive recipients of charity. Of course, the challenges ahead are immense. Financing must be secured without surrendering sovereignty. Corruption, the bane of so many African projects, must be crushed with transparency and accountability. Technical expertise must be nurtured so that Africa builds not just infrastructure, but also human capacity. Security threats, from terrorist groups to political destabilization, must be managed so that projects are not derailed. And most importantly, unity must be preserved because regional rivals or Western-backed spoilers could easily attempt to sabotage progress. Yet, despite these challenges, the momentum generated by Traoré's announcement has created a sense of inevitability. Even skeptics concede that Africa cannot afford to ignore the call for energy independence any longer. The symbolism of Burkina Faso leading this charge is itself remarkable. Often dismissed as one of Africa's poorest nations, Burkina Faso has, under Traoré, become a lightning rod of defiance and innovation. By daring to dream of electrifying an entire region, Traoré is flipping the script on Western narratives. He is showing that leadership is not about the size of a country's GDP, but about the courage to imagine and to act. Whether the $800 billion plan achieves full realization or partial success, its ripple effects are already being felt. Conversations about sovereignty, unity, and the end of dependency are spreading across borders, and in that sense, the plan is already succeeding. As the years unfold, history will judge whether Traoré's audacious vision was folly or foresight. But today, one thing is clear. The announcement has awakened hope, pride, and debate across Africa and beyond. It has reminded the world that Africa is not passive. It is not merely a supplier of raw materials or a recipient of instructions. It is a continent of people who yearn for dignity, who dream of development, and who are ready to take bold steps to secure their future. Ibrahim Traoré's $800 billion plan to power West Africa is therefore more than an energy project. It is a manifesto of independence, a declaration that Africa's future will no longer be dictated by others. And whether the world likes it or not, that future has already begun to take shape.